Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at round number one of the Norway chess event in the year 2024. Now, I competed last year in 2023, and I actually won the event with a critical last round win over Fabiano Caruana. Now, as fate would have it, in the first round, I'm once again paired with Fabiano, this time with the black pieces. Now, before we get into all the actions, or into the action, let me explain a couple of things. First of all, this event only has 6 players instead of the classical 10 players, which means you play a double round robin, once with white and once with black to make it fair. Now, on top of that, another very interesting concept is that if the classical game ends in a draw, that is not enough. You have to come back and play an Armageddon game for the remaining half point. Now, I think this is a great idea because what it does is it gives the spectators their money's worth. Now, Norway Chess is an event where it's held in an auditorium. You have like maybe 50 to 100 people who are watching. And if the game is drawn very quickly, that is not acceptable. These people pay money. They come, they show up, they want to watch some exciting chess. And then you get a 10-move draw like in the game between Ding Liren and Magnus Carlsen. And you're left very, very unsatisfied. So there are a couple of little things that are different, but let's jump into the action. So, in the first round, I have the black piece against Fabiano, and the game starts with the move e4. Here I play e5, knight f3, knight c6, and now we get the classic Gucci piano from Fabiano with the move bishop c4. I play knight f6, and now Fabiano goes d3. Now, those of you guys who were here 1 year ago, you probably remember that in the final round, I played this move knight g5 with the white piece against Fabiano. He did not react correctly in this attempted fried liver. I won that game, and I won the tournament. Fabiano instead opts to play d3, guarding the pawn on e4, and now I play this move h6. Now, the reasoning behind playing this h6 move is it stops white from ever going bishop g5 to pin the tail on the donkey. Fabi plays c3, I go bishop c5, he castles, I castle, and now I play his move rook e1, and here I go d6. Now, we've more or less transposed back into the main lines of the Italian, but because I played the early h6 here, white never could put this bishop on g5 and pin the knight. Fabi goes h3, I go bishop b6, knight d2, and now I play his move a5. Now, already here, Fabiano was starting to think, and I was feeling very good about myself because this is what I had prepared before the game. So we get bishop b5, I play bishop e6, a4 here. Now, keep in mind, of course, not to sort of share too many secrets because obviously it's a long tournament and there are many more rounds to go. But this is something that I looked at multiple times during the candidates, so I felt very, very at home in this position. Here I go knight d7, and the idea behind knight d7 is to play for f5, opening up this f file potentially for the rook. Fabi plays knight c4, I go f5, he trades on f5, and I take with a bishop. Game continues with d4, I play e4, and now he goes knight to h2. Now, this move did take me a little bit by surprise. Prior to the game, I had looked at this move knight d2, d5, and after takes f3, black should take, and after knight takes f3 and knight to c4, the position is very, very balanced, and the game should end in a draw. But Fabi instead plays knight to h2. I play d5 anyway. He trades and goes f3. Now, at this point, I knew there was a difference between the knight being on h2 or the knight being on d2. Now, here I really wanted to play this move queen to h4, but after this move bishop to e3, which Fabi and I discussed, I simply didn't see a breakthrough. Now, one line that I considered was bishop takes h3, takes, e takes f3. If white goes knight f3, I check the king and win the horse on f3. But white can go queen to d2 here, and after queen g3, king h1, there's no checkmate on g2, the queen covers the square, and now white has 2 bishops and a knight versus the 2 knights, and I think white is better here. Now, again, very hard to judge over the board whether this is good or not, but keep in mind this is also the very first round of the tournament, so I don't really want to go super wild, get out of control, especially because in my first 2 games, I have black against Fabiano and black against Magnus Carlsen. So after Fabiano goes f3 here, I end up deciding to play the move e takes f3. Now, this move was simply a mistake because when I played this move, first of all, I knew Fabi was probably going to take with the queen and not the knight. After knight takes knight c4, we transpose into the line that I looked at before the game. But after queen takes f3, I just assumed that after queen to h4 and bishop to e3, there was probably some tactic here that would save the game for me. But as I realized during my long think here, there was nothing that I was really completely satisfied with. One of the lines that I considered was this move bishop to d7, but after bishop f2 attacking the queen, if I go queen g5 and white goes queen g3 here, white is now targeting this pawn on c7 with the queen. If I trade, the pawn's under pressure. White has the 2 b's as well. And in general, it's just very, very unpleasant to play. So I really started thinking here for a long time. So I was very, very upset at myself. I was a little bit too casual, assuming there was some magic here that would be completely fine for me. And at the end of the day, I ended up playing this move, knight to e7. Now, this move was a very deep conceptual move that I came up with. The idea is actually, if I can in this position, you'll notice that the knight is in front of this pawn on c7. So if white can ever line up something just to illustrate the point with the queen and the bishop here targeting the pawn, this knight is in the way. I cannot push this pawn to c6, so I'm in a lot of trouble. So when I go knight to e7 here, the plan is to play c6 here, which will connect the chain. Let's just say white plays a random move like, I don't know, queen d1. If I get c6 here, now there's never going to be any pressure on this diagonal as the pawn chain is on pawn chain. The pawns from b7 to d5 are on the light squares. So there's no pressure on this long dark square diagonal anymore, and black should be fine. Additionally, when I play knight to e7, I have a secondary idea, which is that when Fabiano plays queen g3, now I play this move knight g6, and the idea behind this is on top of keeping the c6 move in reserve, now white can never line up the battery on the diagonal here as the knight covers a square. Which means then that this dark square bishop is actually not that good. If you can't go to f4 or g5, you can go to d2 or even e3, but what is the bishop doing here? It's simply on a closed diagonal. Same thing on d2, the bishop simply has no scope. So when I get the knight to g6, I figure, well, now I can't activate the bishop. I still have c6, and I should be completely fine. Now, keep in mind, when I went for this line, I was not 100% sure if it was okay. I had a feeling it might be a little bit sketchy, but nonetheless, I'm at a certain age where if I come up with a plan, generally, I'm going to follow through if I don't see a reason for it to be bad. So Fabiano goes rook f1 here, and now I play the move c6, attacking the bishop on b5. And here Fabiano sacks the rook with rook takes f5. Now, I actually expected this move because if white plays a move like bishop to e2, I can play either queen to h4 or even queen to b8 here. And in this endgame, with this pawn structure being so solid and pawns being very, very symmetrical here, I don't think white has much, even though he has the pair of b's. So Fabiano decides to play rook takes f5, which is sort of what I was expecting. I took the rook, and now he played the move bishop d3. Now, according to the supercomputers, if you let them get depth, and these are computers that are better than the engine I'm currently using, the computer actually gives white a very big advantage after this move knight g4. Now, the reason this move is so strong is that if I take the bishop, white sacks the knight, I chop, he chops, and suddenly when I move the king, he takes, check, and takes the rook and wins the game as I'm missing all my kingside pawns. So after knight g4, I can't take the bishop. Now what I have to do here is go king to h8, so that if white takes here, after takes, suddenly it's not a check, and now I can calmly retreat the rook to attack the queen. Rook is guarded by my own queen, and now I win the bishop on b5, and I should win the game. So here white should play bishop to d3, which I didn't see this exact position, but along these lines is that here I can play the move queen to h4. But apparently after this move queen to e3, white maintains an advantage. I guess after queen h5, white is supposed to play takes, and b3, and white's better here. Again, this is a very computerish line. White also creates a classic bathtub formation with the 4 pawns, but this is something that I don't think from a human perspective is very easy to find. So Fabiano ends up playing the move bishop to d3 instead, a very reasonable move to attack both the knight and the rook at the same time. Keep in mind, if white gobbles the horse here, I retreat the rook, attacking the queen, and when white moves the queen, I simply take the bishop, and once again, I'm a little bit better. So Fabiano goes bishop d3, and now I play this move queen to h4. Now, queen to h4 is a very, very critical move. It's a move that I basically saw in all of these variations to try and save my bacon, because if white moves the queen away, I retreat the rook and guard the knight. And if white trades, now after takes, we're in an endgame where both sides have the same amount of material. So Fabi here plays move queen g6. Now, I did see this move queen e3, which the computer still likes, but after rook f6, knight g4, I can go rook to d6 here. The rook is simply guarding the knight. And after b3, knight f8, I assume that I should be fine, as I will move the rook to e6 and go for rook to e1 check down the road. Computer says after bishop f5, I guess white keeps chances to maintain an advantage, but all these moves are very deep and very computerish, and frankly, you have to keep in mind that from a human perspective, white is down in exchange. Black has a rook for a bishop, so if you don't have a killer blow right away, it's very hard to continue playing positionally as though you've done nothing wrong. It's one of the biggest things that computers are so good at, is they can sack material and just continue playing moves that we as humans couldn't play because we feel like we need to put pressure on our opponent because we're down material, and in the long term, you know that if you're down material, you're just going to lose the game. So this line with bishop f5 is frankly not very human, and I don't think anybody would find this, including Magnus Carlsen. So here, Fabiano does not go for any of the crazy lines with queen e3. Keep in mind, he's also down 30 minutes on the clock here, and there is no increment until move 41. So Fabi plays queen g6. Now I go check, king h1. I check, and he blocks with the knight, and now I take with the rook, sacking the rook back in return. Now, white would love to go king to h2 here with the idea of playing for more on the diagonal with queen h7, but unfortunately, this move loses on the spot, as here I can play the move rook to h1, creating the classic checkmate, as the king has no escape square. So, Fabi decides instead to take the rook, and now after queen takes, king h2, and queen f7, the game really is petered out. We're in a simplified position with the same amount of pieces on the board, and after queen g3, I go king h7, not hanging the pawn on h6 here. Fabi plays bishop f4, I go rook e8, he plays b3, trying to stop me from jumping with the horse, and after I play rook to e6 here, we agree to a draw. There is a no draw rule before move 30, but both sides have played 30 moves, and at this point, I simply offered Fabiano a draw, as I didn't really see a good way for him to continue the game. He can maybe go something like rook to f1, maybe bishop c7 as well, although bishop c7 leads to a forced draw after rook g6, because after queen to f4, rook f6, queen g3, rook g6, white has to keep moving the queen on the diagonal, or else you will lose the bishop. So, after rook to e6, the game ends in a draw in the classical portion, which means we both, I believe, get 1 point. If you win in classical, you get 3 points. If you draw, you both get 1, and then you play the classic Armagottem for the remaining half point. So, let's jump right into the second game, which is, of course, the Armageddon game here. Fabiano with the white pieces must win this game. If it's a draw, I get the extra half point. So the game starts with e4. Now here I decide to play c5. Changing it up, we get knight f3, d6, d4, takes, knight f6, knight c3, and now I play this move e5. Now, for those of you who are relatively new to the channel, or you've only been around for a month, you'll probably remember this is the surprise weapon that I played in the first round of the Canada's tournament when I had the black pieces against Fabiano. So I figured, why not give it a go in the rapid/blitz game, because I figured that Fabiano probably is not expecting this. I've already used it once, and when I paid attention to some of the things he said, like in the C-Squared podcast, it's very clear that when you use an idea once, from a professional standpoint, as a professional player, you do not expect someone to play the same bad line for a second time. So I kind of use this psychology, if you want to call it, to my advantage here. I have these ideas of what I'm trying to do, and I just expect Fabiano to not be ready. And the element of surprise is very, very critical, as I believe Sun Tzu said something like 2,000 years ago. So we get bishop b5, knight d7, knight f5, a6, and now Fabiano plays the move bishop e2. In the candidates game, Fabiano played bishop a4, we had b5, bishop b3, knight c5, and then we had a very complicated game, but one that ended in a draw. So Fabiano goes bishop to e2 here, and now I play the move knight c5, trying to target this pawn on e4 with these knights. He goes knight g3, guarding the pawn with his own knights, and now I play the move b5. Here Fabiano goes a3, trying to stop me from playing b4, removing the knight, which guards the pawn. I go bishop e7, castles, and he plays bishop e3. Now, keep in mind, Fabiano does have a 3-minute advantage from the get-go. It's 10 minutes versus 7, but already here the game is kind of going in the wrong direction because all my moves are very straightforward. What I'm trying to do is activate the bishop to b7 or e6. I also want to go g6 to stop the knight from jumping to f5, and then follow it up with rook c8 and very standard ideas in the Sicilian. So I go bishop b7, Fabiano plays bishop f3, and now I play g6, stopping him from jumping to f5 with the knight. You get queen d2, I go h5, and the greatest thing about this is that all my moves I'm able to play really quickly because they're very thematic. In this position, I create the chain of pawns. I might want to play h4 to distract the knight on g3, but mainly it's just to take some space and then play rook c8 and queen c7, or knight to e6. Now, the lack of ideas makes it so much easier for me to play, especially in a situation where Fabiano must win the game with the white pieces. So Fabi goes bishop h6, I play rook e8, and now he goes rook fe1. White would love to play knight to f5 here, hoping for pawn takes knight, queen g5, and then spaghetti-o checkmate, but I don't take the horse. Instead, I take the pawn on e4, and after takes, let's just say takes, black has one extra pawn in the center of the board, and white probably is a little bit worse. So Fabi goes rook e1, intending to play knight f5 next move, with the pawn on e4 being guarded by the rook, the bishop, and the knight. Here I play knight to e6, and now Fabi goes rook to d1. Now, knight to f5 is not really a move here because I can simply go bishop to f8, which I actually did calculate while Fabiano was thinking. Because if I were to take here, suddenly after takes, he's attacking my bishop and the knight at the same time. And if I take the bishop, he takes the knight, and suddenly this idea with queen g5 and checkmate once again rears its head. But if white goes knight f5, I can play bishop f8, and after takes, white cannot gobble on d6, because then I have knight to d4, creating the bastion. I'm attacking the horse. If you move, let's just say the bishop, I take the horse and win the game. And if you take what looks like the free bishop, I take the bishop, creating a fossil, as well as the classic family fork here. And after white takes back with the pawn, I take the queen and win the game. So Fabi goes rook d1, and now I play this move knight d4. Now, as you'll notice from the clock, Fabiano already down nearly a minute on time here because all my moves I'm able to play really, really quickly. But this is where I probably should have used a little bit more time. Instead, I blitz out knight d4 once again, and now Fabi has this very nice in-between move, knight to f5, trying to sack the horse, because if I take with the pawn, there's no knight covering the square, and again, queen to g5 is checkmate. So after knight f5 here, I was a little bit taken aback, a little bit confused, but fortunately I had enough time that I was able to gather my wits and find a good solution. So I trade the knights on f5, I trade the bishops on f3, and now I play the move queen c8, attacking the pawn on f5. Fabi trades here, and at this point, I felt like I was probably not going to lose the game, because even though I have some weaknesses in the center of the board with the pawns on d6 and e5, white has these double pawns on f2 and f3, and I can bring the queen to f5 to target them very, very quickly. So I felt very, very groovy about the whole situation. So Fabi goes bishop g5. I play queen to f5. He takes, and now I play this move queen f6. Now, it's very important that I not lose my wits and I use my time very well here, because it'd be very easy to panic in this position because white is jumping with the knight to either d5 or e4. So I take, and now Fabi plays knight d5, which is maybe not a blunder, but not the best move, because when Fabiano played this move, it was based on a miscalculation. He figured I attack the queen, and I'm going to fork the rooks with knight to c7. But I can take the pawn, and if white goes knight c7 here, I can go queen g4 check, and after king h1, I simply make the repetition, and if white goes this way, I think I can even go to h3 and then back to g4, and the game should be a draw. And once again, a draw is not good enough for Fabiano. He must win the Armagottem. So, after takes, Fabi plays rook to e3, and now I go queen to f7, and Fabiano almost played this move knight c7, which looks good as it forks the two towers, but here I have bishop to g5, skewering the rook on e3, and after knight takes e8, let's just say takes, and something like king to g7 here. White probably should never lose this game, but with such limited material on the board, both sides with a queen, rook, and 5, and the white king being so open, the game should probably be a draw. So Fabi goes rook g3. I play bishop to h4. Important move here, by the way, because if I play a quiet move like rook c8 to stop the fork, after queen to h6, suddenly I'm losing the game immediately. So I go bishop h4. He plays rook g2 here, and now I play this move king h7 here, trying to stop white from going queen to h6. Fabi plays knight c3, and now I play the move e4 here, trying to take away the square from the horse. Keep in mind here, white's rook on g2 is actually a very, very bad piece because it simply has no squares available. And even though it looks like it's doing something on g-file, my rooks are much better placed in the position. Fabi goes queen e2, and now I play this move queen to f3, and this is where Fabi takes on d6. Now, you're probably thinking, wait, you just blundered a pawn. But what I realized here after rook d6 and rook d8 is that white has this bum rook on g2 that cannot move here, and because of that, if my rook controls the open lane here on the d file, there are very, very good chances for me to win. So Fabiano trades the rook. If Fabiano were to play rook takes pawn, by the way, creating the classic castle mania on the g file, I trade the queens, or I take, and after check, I go this way, not here, because uh-oh, spaghetti-o, checkmate. After here, takes, and rook to d1. It's a very awkward back rank checkmate, as the king cannot move forward. If white takes with this rook, by the way, I take the rook. If white takes the queen, I take this rook in between, checking the king, and then I win the queen and the game. And if white takes here, I go check, hitting the king f1, and queen h1, which is checkmate. So Fabi has to trade the rooks, and now he plays the move king f1. If white were to go queen e4, there's rook to d1, takes, and again, it's the classic ice skater, as after queen e1, I take the queen and mate the king. Fabi plays the move king to f1 here, and now I play the move queen f4. Now, this move is probably not the best move. Already here, I should have played either a5 or bishop to f6, trying to remove the defender from this d1 square. Instead, I go queen f4. Fabio plays queen e3. I go back to f3 here. Luckily for me, Fabiano doesn't have many options. Again, if he ever takes, I always have this rook d1 check move, and so he plays h3. Here I go rook d6. He goes rook g1, and now finally I play a5, trying to go for b4 to remove this knight so I can checkmate on the back rank. Fabio plays b4, I trade, and here I play this move, bishop f6. Now, keep in mind, you'll look at the eval bar and you're like, wait, what is this move? It's a huge blunder. I did see the move rook to a6, which stops queen a7, and I intend to go rook a1. But after takes king e1, I saw this line with check, king d2, takes here, bishop e3, and king d3, and I just wasn't completely sure what's going on because white's winning this pawn on b5. He's going to get 2 pawns rolling up the board, and even though I have these 3 pawns here on the king side, this pawn on f3 is also very weak, and it just felt a little bit too risky. Which is why I played this move bishop to f6, trying to win the knight on c3. And here Fabiano could have forced a draw with rook g3, attacking the queen. If I trade, rook guards the knight, and I go check, queen f3, and white has to make the repetition. But a repetition would be good enough for me, as a draw on the Armageddon would count as a win, since I have the black pieces. So I go bishop f6, and Fabiano plays move queen e4 here very quickly, blundering this move rook to d1, checking the king on f1. White has no squares available for the king, and if white takes the rook here, I take the queen, and with a queen versus a rook, I should win the game. So after rook to d1, Fabiano resigns the Armageddon game. That means that out of the 1.5 points in play, I get the maximum. We draw the classical game. I win the Armageddon. Now, all 3 games today did go to Armageddon. So there's going to be a 3-way tie at the top between myself, Magus, and the winner of the Armageddon between Ramesh Babu Pragnanan, and Alireza Faruja. So that's going to be it for now, you guys. We got what felt like a very smooth draw in the classical portion, and then a nice win in the Armageddon with black. Tomorrow, I have my second black in a row against Magnus Carlsen, the 5-time world champion. Should be a pretty exciting matchup, but when all is said and done, I'm very happy as I'm starting with 2 blacks, so getting off to this good start should be advantageous for me. So, on that note, you guys, I'm going to call it for right now. I'm going to go eat some dinner, relax, try to get ready for the big match against Magus tomorrow. But I do hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the first round of Norway Chess. Of course, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below. And we will be back tomorrow with a recap after my second round matchup against Magnus Carlsen. See you guys soon. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one. Bye.